The horrendous murder of Alison Baden Clay, a crime against the person. It all started on the 19th of April 2012, the offender Gerard Baden Clay and the victim Alison Baden Clay. Within the early hours of the 20th of April 2012 in Brookfield, Brisbane, Australia, Gerard Baden Clay made a phone call to the police proclaiming his wife a missing person.
I don't know where she is.
Okay. When did you last see her, sir?
Last night. I got up this morning and she wasn't there.
A legal measure was taken by the police to set up an incident room for the assistance of the investigation, in addition to asking local residents to search for minute information. After the mystery hit the eye of the media and became public, many people took into account the lack of footage of Gerard pleading for his wife. He appeared once. His face was turned away and he did not seem very much concerned about the whereabouts of his wife. Rather, he was more accounting for his absence within the media.
They've got 3 young girls and we really trust that the police are doing everything they can to find my wife. And
the Brisbane police took initiative in widening their search for the body of Alison Baden Clay by setting out a mannequin in front of the Baden Clay household. The police also stationed a roadblock near the home of Alison Baden Clay in order to glean information from drivers for the assistance of the investigation. They continued to extend their search to many of the areas surrounding the Baden Clay home. 10 days later, a female body was discovered at Collow Creek, 13 kilometres away from the Baden Clay family home.
A female person has been located deceased on the banks of the creek in that particular area. At this time, I can't confirm that that person is the missing person, Alison Baden Clay.
It was identified as Alison's body the next day. It was the 13th of June 2012, 74 days after the victim was proclaimed missing, that Gerard Baden Clay was convicted of murder based on toxicology reports and police interviews. He was kept remanded and in custody. However, the responsiveness of the law is tested and deemed inefficient as the trial started 10th of June 2014, which was just under 2 years of the initial charge. The day after Gerard was formally interviewed and charged with murder, he appeared in Brisbane Magistrates Court for the murder charge. The prosecution was granted a forensic order to receive DNA samples from him to compare in the evidence. Many non-legal and legal measures were taken in order to account for the murder. A fundraiser by an NGO on the 24th of July 2012 was held for the Baden Clay children, Hannah, Sarah and Ella. This was done in order to thank the community for support and helping with the search. Also, the continuous media reporting in order to keep the public updated allowed for them to know that the legal system is attempting to meet society's needs and reflect its values. Legal measures taken include a series of bail applications filed in the Supreme Court. However, these were dismissed. The Brisbane Magistrates Court, in its denouncing a 5-month period for the police to examine financial documents and the affairs of the Baden Clay family. The court also required a brief of evidence by the prosecution within 6 weeks of the hearing. The circumstantial evidence was riveting in many ways. As no one claims to have seen the accused kill his wife, this is a circumstantial case, Justice Byron said. Within the first days of the investigation, Gerard wasn't within the eyes of the media. In pleading for her return, not only was he passive and vague to the media when he did eventually appear on the 24th of April 2012, which was 4 days after she had gone missing, but also refused to make a formal statement to the police. By simply being the victim's husband, Gerard Baden Clay was prone to having suspicions against him. Another valuable piece of evidence was the statement that Gerard Baden Clay was the last person to see his wife the night before her 10 p.m. jog, in which he also claimed that he went to bed after she had left at 10 p.m. on the 19th of April 2012. However, his mobile phone has records of connecting to a charger at 1:48 a.m. the next morning. Another circumstantial piece of evidence that had sparked suspicions against Baden Clay was that he had phoned the police of his missing wife, then immediately contacted his criminal lawyer. This may portray guilt or the need of protection, in which, in this time of grief, should have been the last thing on his mind. Toxicology reports were kept confidential by the Brisbane police and were not released to the public. Relationship problems were prominent within Baden Clay's life. He had a mistress who implored that she was expecting Gerard to leave Alison, but his double life resulted in the downfall of his marriage, which was evident through the friends of Alison and her counsellor. This mistress, Tony McHugh, was of a long-time affair in which the prosecution used as a front line of motive for the murder. This relationship created a rift between the married couple, causing them to seek relationship counselling. Gerard Baden Clay also had a motive for that night for the murder, as the next day he was expecting his wife and the mistress to attend the same event at a work-related conference. After many complies with Tony, he realised that they would be within close proximity and most likely cross paths. The relationship was also addressed by the counsellor, and Alison was advised to start to write her emotions within a diary, which she did. The counsellor also suggested that Gerard was to sit down for 10 to 15 minutes a day for Alison to express her feelings and thoughts. Scratches on Gerard's face were a crucial part of the evidence. There were 3 scratches on the right side of his cheek the morning he had reported his wife missing, but he had covered them up as being shaving cuts. However, forensics doubted this and concluded they were highly probably fingernail scratches. This was as they were of a wide opening and considerably deep, indicating a struggle. These 3 cuts could have been coherent with vertical fingernail scratches and were on the basis of the most crucial evidence in the suspicions that were risen against Mr. Baden Clay, as addressed by Leslie Griffiths. However, the scratches on Gerard's chest and armpit were said to be self-induced, and the one on his neck was from trying to scratch away a caterpillar. Leaves in her hair provided a great deal of evidence. 6 plant species of leaves in Alison's hair were found which were concurrent with those that were present within the Baden Clay home patio. Only 2 of these species were also found in the Colo Creek, indicating that she would have been moved from her home to the creek. The police also spoke to Hannah, Sarah and Ella on the 20th of April and 27th of June 2012. They stated, "If they do fight, it's only little arguments, really tiny. They go for a couple of seconds and then they stop." The financial documents were addressed in the committal hearing on March 11, 2013 as follows. Gerard was in debt, around $1 million owing to others. In addition to this, he could not afford a divorce. Just to family and friends, he owed $300,000. At the beginning of 2011, the accused partners wanted to liquidate their business or dismiss all the staff. Gerard decided he wanted to own the whole rental business, and to do that, he had required to buy the interests of the other owners. However, he was not able to get finance to pay the $300,000 to do so. Instead, he asked Dr. Bruce Flegg, a friend, if he could borrow these amounts, but Dr. Flegg declined. Gerard Baden Clay then decided to borrow from 3 old business friends, Robert Cheeseman, Stuart Christ, and Peter Craner, around $90,000 from each. None of these loans had been repaid by the time of the crime. After the death of his wife had been confirmed by police, Gerard went to claim her life insurance immediately for the sum of $400,000. Many methods of obtaining the evidence was considered in order to support the case. The police interviews were of these legal mechanisms. Counselors were evidently significant in providing evidence as to portray the relationship status and also some financial documentation, as was the use of forensics through the toxicology reports and DNA collection. Much of the DNA found pointed to Gerard Baden Clay being the murderer. There was skin beneath Alison's fingernails that were matched to be of someone else's, which also resides with the fact that Gerard had fingernail scratches on his face. There was also a blood stain obtained from the folded back seats of the Holden Captiva of the Baden Clay family, which also matched that of Alison Baden Clay. Blood was extracted from the deceased's liver. The results came back with traces of an antidepressant, sertraline. This supported the fact that she was suffering from depression and anxiety as communicated to her relationship counsellor, Miss Carmel Ritchie. After the defendant was charged with murder and kept within remand, he lodged for a bail application within the Supreme Court on the 21st of June 2012, which was refused the next day due to the Justice's opinion that the defendant would run from authorities. The second bail application was lodged on the 14th of December 2012 in the Supreme Court, which was also dismissed. Non-legal measures were undertaken through the investigation and in the midst of the evidence collection. This included the continuous reporting by the media of evidence that arose. The committal hearing was crucial in the investigation of Gerard Baden Clay, which was held on the 11th of March 2013, with the Crown led by prosecutor barrister Danny Boyle. With over 40 witnesses, Kerry Ann Walker was among them who testified first. She spoke about Alison's fluctuated periods of depression dating back to her honeymoon in 1997. The committal hearing in the local court was spread over 2 weeks, consisting of 6 days before Chief Magistrate Brendan Butler committed Gerard Baden Clay to stand trial for the murder of his wife, Alison Baden Clay, on the 20th of March 2013. Vetting jurors took place on the 2nd of June 2014, consisting of these questions. From these, 7 men and 5 women were chosen as a jury, with 3 set aside as reserves on the 9th of June 2014. The next day was the start of the original trial in the Supreme Court that was to take place for 4 weeks, in which the accused pleaded not guilty to murdering his wife, Alison Baden Clay, 2 years prior. The judge's comments were of great significance prior to the jury deliberation, as it summed up the case. Justice John Byron did this for the jury due to the length of the trial being a month and 5 days, with the abundance of evidence that arose during the time period. Both direct and circumstantial evidence are to be considered. It is not necessary that facts be proven by direct evidence, as said by Justice John Byron. This indicates he wanted the jury to take all the evidence into consideration before delivering their verdict. The defense's case goes as the following. The forensic pathologist was unable to establish a cause of death and unable to exclude drowning as a possibility. Gerard Baden Clay gave consent for the police to examine the house and car, and no blood stains or obvious signs of cleanup were present. None of the Baden Clay children heard a fight between their parents, nor car noises on the night of the crime. The defense argued a blood stain found in the Holden Captiva could not be age, and the accused had confessed about the affair to his wife. However, no temper arose on the night. Baden Clay did not conceal the marks on his face other than saying that they were shaving marks. Experts said injuries were consistent with fingernail scratches, but they could have been caused by a razor. Relationships counsellor Carmel Ritchie thought Miss Baden Clay had a high chance that she was on a depression relapse. The defense also argued that Gerard Baden Clay had no intention and no reason to kill his wife. The prosecution thought otherwise, stating that it takes considerable time to walk to Colo Creek, and Miss Baden Clay was a reluctant exerciser. They also stated the position of Miss Baden Clay's body was consistent with having been rolled, and the current of the water could not have done so. The prosecution told the jury 6 leaf species were found intertwined into Miss Baden Clay's hair and jumper. Only 2 of the 6 were found at Colo Creek and all 6 in Baden Clay home. The blood of the deceased was in the Holden Captiva under the seats. Experts identified 2 distinct injuries on Baden Clay's face, one consistent with fingernail scratches, indicating a struggle, and others of shaving marks to disguise them. The prosecution argued Baden Clay was under financial pressure, relationship pressure, from his wife and his mistress Toni McHugh, and that he did not have the courage or finances to leave his wife. The jury had the options of Gerard Baden Clay being innocent or guilty to murder, and if innocent of murder, then the jury was to be asked whether the accused was guilty or innocent of manslaughter. On July 15, 2014, Justice John Byron sentenced Baden Clay to life imprisonment with non-parole period of 15 years after the jury's verdict depicted the accused guilty of the murder of his wife. Gerard Baden Clay on the 7th of August 2015 appealed the case, claiming the verdict was unreasonable, and changed his plea, stating he unintentionally killed Alison within an argument and panic had been the cause of him trying to hide the body. On the 8th of December that year, the Supreme Court of Appeal substituted the murder conviction to manslaughter on the grounds that there was a reasonable hypothesis of innocence of Gerard Baden Clay and that the crime occurred unintentionally. The Director of Public Prosecutions then launched an appeal on December 30th, 2015 to the High Court of Australia on the basis of the public outcry after the rally in King George Square, with hundreds gathered to culminate an appeal. On May 12, 2016, the High Court granted the appeal. The murder conviction was reinstated by the High Court of Australia on the 26th of July 2016 with life imprisonment, while setting a precedent regarding the way the defendant was to give evidence and post-offence behaviour. Through the case of Gerard Baden Clay, justice was achieved not only for the family of Alison Baden Clay, but also for society.